All right. Ready to dive into something that honestly sounds kind of dry just from the title.
Yeah, I gotta admit, when I first saw this one, I thought, oof, this is gonna be a tough one.
But trust me, it gets really interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
We're looking at this 2024 research article. It's from the International Journal of Modern Education Studies.
Catchy titles,
It's
Jen.
super catchy. Examination of types of mathematical connections that pre-service mathematics teachers use in instructions.
Rolls right off the tongue.
But what they're really getting at is how future math teachers, the ones still in training,
Right.
how they're learning to make math more engaging and, I don't know, just more connected to, like, everything else.
More connected, yeah. And not just for the students, but for the teachers themselves.
Exactly. And get this, the study actually observed 60 of these pre-service teachers.
Wow, 60.
And as they designed and taught these mini lessons.
So, like, putting the theory into practice.
And the researchers were laser focused on how they use something called mathematical connections in their teaching.
Which, by the end of this deep dive, you'll know exactly what those are, why they matter, and maybe even, I don't know, you might even start seeing them everywhere.
You might. They're kind of sneaky like that.
Everywhere you look, math.
So, first things first. What exactly are these mathematical connections?
Okay, so the study breaks it down into two main types, right?
Okay.
You've got intra-mathematical.
Okay.
That's all the links within math itself.
So, like math connecting to more math.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Think of math as this giant web, right?
Mm.
Each concept is like a node, and the connections are the threads that hold the whole thing together.
So it's kind of like seeing how different parts of math, relate to each other.
Exactly, how they fit together.
Sure.
So we're talking about links between like different concepts, different formulas, even different ways of representing the same idea. Like you could have a graph, an equation, or a table.
Right.
They all show the same relationship, just in different forms.
That makes a lot of sense. And what about extra mathematical? What are those connections all about?
So that's where it gets really interesting, because those connections link math to, well, everything outside of math.
Oh, wow.
Real-life situations, other subjects, history. It's about showing that math isn't just this isolated thing, but a tool for understanding the whole world.
So instead of just memorizing formulas, it's about seeing how math applies to, like, everyday life.
Bingo.
And did the researchers actually see these future teachers using these connections in their lessons?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
They did. Get this, 80% of them incorporated at least one type of connection.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
I know, right?
I'm assuming some types were more popular than others.
You are correct.
Yeah.
The most popular, by far, 53% of the teachers used this, was connecting different representations of the same concept.
Oh, okay. So like that graph, equation, table thing.
Yeah, exactly. But they got really creative with it. Like one teacher used physical models Andy software to show how a cylinder unfolds.
Can you imagine? I mean, that would make so much more sense than just looking at a diagram.
Right. Way more engaging.
Yeah. Were there any other multiple representation examples that really stood out?
Oh, tons. But this one was great. One teacher used, get this, cups, chickpeas, and beans
Wait, what?
to teach about greatest common factors and least common multiples.
Okay, so using food to teach math. I'm into that. And it's connecting it to real life, too, right? Like dividing things up is something we do all the time.
Yeah. You're totally right. There's often overlap between these different types of connections, which makes it even cooler, I think.
It's all connected.
See? And that actually leads us perfectly to the second most popular type, connecting math to real life, which 43% of the teachers did.
Okay, I'm all for making math more relatable. What kind of real-world examples were they using?
Oh, all sorts. One connected adding fractions to fabric shopping.
Oh, interesting.
Another one used a Ferris wheel to introduce circles.
Oh, okay, I can see that.
But here's one that I thought was just brilliant.
All right, let's hear it.
Hot and cold water bottles
Okay.
to represent positive and negative numbers.
That's so smart. You can actually feel the difference in temperature, so it makes those abstract ideas way more concrete.
Right. It's not just about making math more fun either.
Right, right.
These connections have real cognitive benefits, you know.
No, yeah, for sure.
Seeing something in multiple ways, it activates different parts of your brain.
Ah, so it's like building a richer picture of the concept in your mind.
Exactly.
So we've got different representations connecting to real life.
Yeah.
What other types of connections were these future teachers using?
All right, so the next most common, 30% of the teachers use this one, was connecting different concepts within math itself.
Okay, so kind of building bridges between different topics.
Yes. helping students see how those topics relate, how they build on each other. For example, one teacher used parallelograms made from circle slices.
Circle slices?
Yeah, to teach about the area of a circle.
Oh, wow.
It's actually shown in figure 2 of the article if you want to see what that looks like. It's a great visual.
So instead of memorizing area formulas as separate things, the students are actually understanding where they come from.
Yeah. And another teacher built up to cylinders by starting with prisms.
Showing how they're related.
Yeah. It's all about the big picture, you know?
Makes sense. So what about connecting math to, like, other subjects? Was that happening too?
It was. But surprisingly, this was the least common type. Only 7% of the pre-service teachers used it.
That was surprising. Any idea why that might be? Is it just harder to do, or?
That's a great question. I wondered that myself reading this. It could be that teachers feel less comfortable, going outside their subject area.
Yeah, that's fair.
Or maybe it's just the way curriculum is structured,
Like math is math, science is science.
Exactly. Totally separate.
Which is a shame because the examples from the study were so cool. They had one teacher connecting exponential expressions to bacteria growth.
Yes. And finance, too.
Talk about interdisciplinary.
Right. There was another teacher using the areas of different continents.
So geography.
To teach about adding fractions. And they even had this really cool activity where students encrypted their names using integer comparisons.
That sounds like it could tie into computer science or coding even.
Absolutely. You can check out figure 9 in the article. It shows what that looks like visually.
These examples, they might be less frequent, but they really show you what's possible. Like when we actually break down those walls between subjects.
Sure.
So much potential.
It's not just about being interesting either. When you connect math to other subjects, you start to see its relevance everywhere. It could even spark, a new interest or passion.
Totally. Okay, so these future teachers were clearly trying out all these different types of connections, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
But how were they actually making it happen? Was it all just talking about it, or did they get creative?
Well, a most common was verbal explanation.
Okay.
But, and this is key, that doesn't mean it was boring.
Right.
A lot of them were using really vivid language, bringing in those real-world examples, asking thought-provoking questions.
So they weren't just lecturing at the students. They were making it engaging.
Exactly.
And they didn't shy away from other methods either.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
They were using visuals, manipulatives like those chickpeas and beans we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
Even technology, like dynamic geometry software. It was inspiring, honestly. It gave me tons of ideas to try myself.
Makes me wish my math classes had been that creative, honestly.
I know, right?
But it's not just about what the teachers think, right? Like, did they actually see the value in making these connections? Or was it just like something they had to do for the study?
Oh, no. They were totally on board. The researchers actually asked them about this, got their opinions. And it was overwhelmingly positive.
That's awesome.
Isn't it?
What were some of the benefits they mentioned?
Well, a lot of them felt that connections make math more relatable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just this abstract thing anymore.
Exactly. There's actually a quote from one of the teachers. They said, "I think that if it is understood that the problems that students face in their daily lives are actually mathematical, it will be easier for the students."
That makes total sense. When you see how math applies to your life, it becomes a tool, not just a subject.
Right. And a bunch of other teachers said similar things. They felt it made math easier to understand, easier to remember, because it's connected to something meaningful.
There's another quote, I think it's from teacher number 12, something about math being a cumulative science.
Yes. That one really struck me too. They said, hold on, let me find the exact quote. "Mathematics is a cumulative science. A teacher should establish these relationships very well so that the student knows that the subjects are not independent of each other and that Hesho should know the related subjects."
Wow, that's powerful. So it's about understanding the structure of math, how everything fits together.
Exactly. It's not just about separate facts.
It's like a puzzle, right?
Yes.
Each piece makes more sense when you see how it connects to the others.
And that understanding makes learning so much more effective.
Absolutely. And all this, it's not just for teachers, right?
No, not at all. Even if you're not in a classroom, knowing about these connections, it can change how you think about learning, problem solving, anything, really.
So it's kind of like having this secret decoder ring.
Right. Like you suddenly see patterns, relationships that you might have missed before.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
So think about a topic that you're struggling to understand right now. Could mathematical connections help? What real-life examples would make it click for you?
I mean, we saw how those teachers used chickpeas and water bottles.
Yeah.
What everyday objects or experiences have given you those aha moments?
Share your discovery with us on social media using #DeepDiveMath. We'd love to hear your stories.
Yeah, we would. It'd be so cool to see what kind of connections our listeners are making out there.
It's a reminder that math isn't just this abstract subject. It's all around us all the time.
Like, we're all on a treasure hunt for mathematical connections.
Yeah.
Who knows what we'll find?
All right, that wraps up part 1 of our deep dive into mathematical connections. Stick around for part 2, where we'll be discussing. It's like we've been given this new lens to view the world through,
Yeah.
One that highlights all the hidden math connections everywhere.
Exactly. And it's not just about seeing those connections. It's about understanding how they can help us learn better, solve problems.
Become math wizards. But really, one thing that stuck with me was how connecting math to other subjects was the least common approach. Why do you think that is? Is it just more challenging, or?
It's a really good question. And honestly, I think it reflects like a bigger trend in education. We often teach subjects in these silos.
Silos.
Yeah, like math is over here, science is over there, history's off in its own corner.
Totally separate.
Right. And that makes it hard for teachers to even see the connections themselves, let alone help their students make them.
That makes sense. It's like we've built these walls between subjects, and it takes work to break them down.
Exactly. Plus, I think there's a confidence thing too, right? Some teachers might feel more comfortable connecting math to like familiar real life stuff,
Right.
than venturing into other subject areas where they might not feel as experty.
Yeah, totally.
But the examples we did see in this study were so cool.
Right, like that bacteria growth one.
Yes. Connecting exponential expressions to bacteria growth, using continent areas to teach about fractions.
So creative.
Right. Those examples show the potential for making learning more relevant, more engaging, more connected to the real world. It might just take teachers stepping a little outside their comfort zones, collaborating with colleagues from other departments, maybe even doing some extra learning themselves.
Speaking of stepping outside comfort zones.
Yeah.
Let's say a teacher, or anyone, really, wants to get better at making these connections. Where do they start?
Good question.
The article talked about verbal explanations being the most common method. Any tips for making those explanations, like, really sing?
Oh, for sure. First of all, make it relatable. I mean, instead of just launching into some abstract concept, start with something real,
Okay, yeah.
A real-life example, a question that connects to what the learner already knows.
So instead of saying, okay, class, today we're learning about fractions.
Right. You could start by asking, like, has anyone ever had to share a pizza equally with their friends? How did you make sure everyone got a fair slice?
That's way more interesting.
Right.
And it uses something everyone understands.
Exactly. And once you've got their attention, use clear language, avoid jargon, don't overcomplicate it, and visuals. Don't forget visuals.
Oh, yeah. Visuals are so helpful.
Diagrams, charts, graphs, even just doodles on a whiteboard. Those can make abstract ideas way more concrete.
It's like giving the learner multiple ways to get the concept,
Yes. They hear it, they see it, they can connect it to something familiar. And another tip, make it interactive.
Oh, yeah.
Don't just lecture about the connection. Ask questions. Get the learners to share their examples. Maybe even have them figure out the connection on their own.
So it's more like a conversation.
Exactly. Back and forth, bouncing ideas around. And lastly, this might sound cheesy, but enthusiasm goes a long way.
Oh, I agree. Totally.
If you're excited about these connections, that energy is going to rub off on your students or whoever you're talking to.
It's contagious.
Totally. And that actually brings us back to the bigger picture. This isn't just about making math class better. It's about changing how we approach all learning.
It's like shifting from memorizing facts to, exploring and making connections.
Yes. Exactly. Imagine if we could foster that kind of mindset in everyone, from little kids to adults. Encourage people to look for connections, to see the world through this mathematical lens.
It would make learning so much more meaningful and engaging.
Absolutely. It's not just about stuffing your head with information. It's about making sense of the world, about discovering the beauty and power of math.
And the study we've been talking about, it gives us a glimpse of what that kind of learning can look like.
Right. I mean, these pre-service teachers, they were still learning themselves, but they came up with some amazingly creative ways to make those connections come alive. Gives me hope for the future of math education, for sure.
It's inspiring to see, for sure. They're not just teaching math, they're teaching kids how to think.
How to be lifelong learners.
Exactly. Okay, so as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious, what surprised you the most about this study?
Honestly, It was the PSTs themselves, how creative and resourceful they were. I mean, they were using everyday objects, technology, even their own life experiences to make these connections click.
Yeah.
It was a good reminder that good teaching is about being adaptable, responsive.
Not just following a script.
Right. It's about seeing the potential in everyday stuff, finding the hidden connections, bringing a sense of wonder to learning.
And recognizing that learning doesn't have to be confined to a classroom.
Exactly. It can happen anywhere, anytime, as long as we're open to it.
So to wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a question. What's one unexpected math connection you encountered in your life? Maybe it was at work, in your hobbies, or just in the way you see the world.
We talked about how those pre-service teachers use things like chickpeas and water bottles. What everyday objects or experiences have given you an aha moment?
Share it with us.
Yeah.
Hit us up on social media. Use #DeepDiveMath. We love hearing from you guys.
We really do. It's always so fascinating to see, what kinds of connections people are making out there in the wild. It's a good reminder that math really isn't just this abstract, far-off subject.
Right.
It's woven into our everyday lives, whether we realize it or not.
It is. It totally is. It's like we're all on this big treasure hunt for mathematical connections. And
I love that.
who knows what we'll find when we start looking, right?
Exactly. And that's what makes learning and these deep dives so rewarding.
Right.
It's about the journey, the exploration, the discovery. And honestly, who knows? Maybe our listeners' aha moments will inspire future deep dives. That'd be amazing.
That would be so cool. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into mathematical connections. We hope you enjoyed exploring this, honestly, super fascinating topic with us.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground, didn't we?
Yeah.
From the different types of connections to, actually seeing how they can be used in the classroom and beyond.
And most importantly, we hope you've come away with, maybe a new appreciation for the power of math. It's not just formulas and equations.
Right. It's so much more than that. It's about thinking differently, connecting the dots, making sense of the world.
It really is. So keep those mathematical connections coming. Look for them in your daily life. Share what you find and never stop exploring.